How am I doing? It's Wednesday, we're halfway.
It's Wednesday.
It's halfway through.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in class.
So that's my bro. I tried.
Good, sir. How are you?
All right. I see you back there. You're good. Keep talking. You're good. Nothing. Nothing. 24. One gate on
We need to bring it up.
Oh, that works.
Yes, yes.
Look, we do the third meeting.
All right, this one. You brought everything with you? You brought your whole life with you?
I gotta go get her escorted to the building.
I see. With all such.
Who wrote this? In my notebook.
And me, she brought me.
She brought you?
I came late today.
Oh,
See, like she said, she came white today.
okay.
White
Mr.
today.
Lucas,
Let's go.
I'm gonna,
Let's go. We gotta
after the
go.
meeting, I'm gonna talk to you.
We gotta go. Let's go. Go time.
I'm ready for,
Everybody else is starting to put their stuff out.
exactly. So I'm ready to give you what I think it should be. And I'm just confirming.
Are you like
Because I'm not
the
waiting for you.
utility infielder
said.
older? So like, if nobody's here, Alex gets to jump in.
You got 5 minutes for me after?
Pinch it, Alex. Come
7?
on.
5 minutes?
You know,
I only need 5, because I think you're gonna be in 3 minutes.
We going to bed. We need 5 minutes worth. We're gonna go smoke some crack.
I may not need it, but I don't wanna be looking at appropriate.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. I said, I ain't no problem. Yeah, good luck.
This weather is killing me.
Jack seemed to think they're gonna lose him.
That's your friend.
Huh?
That's your friend.
I go after.
I just think because, I took something.
This one you
For me.
This one.
Y'all ready?
Yeah, we ready. Sure.
Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order. City of New Haven. Meeting agenda, Community Development, Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, 6 p.m., Board of Alders Chambers. Meeting can be viewed on Board of Alders YouTube. Board of Alders New Haven notice. The Community Development Committee will meet in person at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, in the Board of Alders Chambers located at 165 Church Street, New Haven, second floor, to hear and act upon the following. LM-2025-0362, order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven approving a development and land disposition agreement between the City of New Haven and GDXP New NHJV LLC with respect to the State Street redesign and those properties known as 183 State Street and 253 State Street, which includes reconfiguring the property into two parcels to be known as Parcel A-2 and Parcel A-1, realigning certain portions of the City of New Haven's right-of-way known as State Street and including discontinuing certain portions of the City of New Haven's right-of-way known as State Street North, affecting parcels A-2 and A-1, consistent with the State Street redesign plan. Board of Alders Resolution Number LM-2023-0093. LM-2025-0363, resolution of the New Haven Board of Alders authorizing the city to apply for and accept a grant from the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development in the amount not to exceed $250,000 to support the planning and design of a technical and financial assistance program for ADU and small healthy home development. These items are on file and available for public inspection in the Office of Legislative Services, 165 Church Street, New Haven, per order. Honorable Carmen Rodriguez, Chair attests. Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need an accessibility-related accommodation, please contact 203-946-7651 or 203-946-8582. In accordance with the City of New Haven COVID-19 guidelines, masks are now optional. Public may send comments to public testimony at newhavenct.gov. At this time, I'm going to ask that my colleagues start from the right, introducing themselves.
Frank Dempsey, Ward 15.
Brian Wingy, Ward 29, Beaver Hills.
Carmen Rodriguez, Ward 6.
Kimberly Edwards, Ward 19.
So at this time, we're going to ask the first presenters to come forward and explain the project before us. I'd ask that as you come up, once you're seated and comfortable, give your name, and each of you give your name and address for the records.
Right up front.
Really?
Yeah.
Go way off to the side.
And if you'd like, you can move those, the microphones closer. No
I
worries.
didn't realize, Melinda, you want to be
Yeah, I can be
close.
That way I can see what I'm pointing at.
Good evening.
And
For the record, Mark Wilson, 15 Bracewood Road, Waterbury. Good evening, Michael Piscatelli, Economic Development Administrator for the city, and reside at 353 Summit Street, New Haven.
oh yeah, I'm Andrea Frenchner from Xenolith Partners. I'm actually a resident of New York City.
I'm Brendan McBride from Gilbane Development, resident of Philadelphia.
Melinda Agron, Newman Architects, 115 Westwood Road, New Haven.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Really appreciate you scheduling a meeting during the middle of the summer. Exciting time here in the city. Over 500 housing permits have been issued since 2020. Part of our statewide leadership on the creation of housing with a very specific emphasis on affordable housing. So both agenda items tonight speak to the need to unlock housing opportunities here in the city, and you've seen a regular run of partnership with the board consistent with your goals and our shared opportunities for inclusive growth. Here with a great team tonight, led by Mark Wilson, our staff at the Housing Administrative Division, along with our development partners for what's known as the State Street lot. So over the years, we've talked about from the Worcester Square Planning Study to the $6 million grant we got from the state of Connecticut to design a new State Street that's under construction now. State really helped us to unlock the development potential of the land on the east side, which was these gravelly parking lots in our near-term memory. But in the longer haul, the prior history before urban renewal was a very vibrant part and the very heart of our city in terms of the historic center of the English settlements here in New Haven, close to the water. And then, people still talk about the shops that were still located on the east side. And all of that kind of got wrecked by urban renewal. So part of our effort to, really build the city up, starting with these parking lots and taking land back and creating opportunity for new housing without displacement is a big part of the effort here. We put out an RFQ last year, try to identify great development partners, both for this lot and the one on George Street across from the Coliseum site. And that development agreement will come to you a little bit later when that one's ready to go with our partners, Glendower and LMXD. But tonight, it's all about this really wonderful new partnership we've opened up with Gilbane Development Corporation and Zenolith. And together with Newman Architects, we've really laid out an exciting vision to build this site in 2 phases, both with significant affordable housing and great density to support our downtown. Really excited to share that with you tonight. We'll go through all the project details, and then Mark and I at the end will be here for any questions and answers on the development agreement itself.
Yeah, I'll kick us off, and we're gonna pass the talking stick among us as we go through our presentation for tonight. So I'll just set the stage for the agenda. We'll do quick introductions about the team and our 3 companies. We'll do site and community context. Melinda will do a design presentation, and then Brendan will talk about the development program. And of course, we'll open it up for questions and discussion. Now, if your pattern is typically to ask questions as we go along, by all means, we're happy to do it that way as well. So let's look at the team. We are a joint venture of 2 development companies, Gilbane Development. The first 4 folks on the left are from Gilbane. The 2 women in the middle, that's Zenolith. And then on the right, you see 3 people from Newman Architects. And we want to just to tell you in general, our team has an extensive record of execution on projects similar to what's going to happen, or what we hope is going to happen on State Street. So projects of this size and scope, mixed income, mixed use, with retail and community components. And I'll talk about Zenolith in a sec. So Brendan, I think you're first for Gilbane.
Sounds good. Great to meet everyone. We haven't met. I'm Brendan McBride, Senior Development Director with Gilbane Development. And first off, just to echo some of what Mike Piscatelli said, I'm a former public servant in New York City, working for the Municipal Housing Agency for several years. So I really applaud New Haven and the work that you all have done in this particular site. And I think the courageous decisions that have been made to sort of shrink the roadway and I think make it more of a walkable place and dedicate some of the land resources to mixed income housing and reinvigoration of this, I think, really critical site that knits together 2 parts of the city that are kind of cleaved apart now. So wanted to commend you on that to start. Gilbane as a company is both a contractor and a developer, development company, and my vertical of the development company specifically only works on affordable and mixed income housing up and down the East Coast. So this is really a classic project for us, something that's complicated and complicated because it's impactful. We're very excited to be working in partnership with Xenolith on this project.
Thanks, Melinda. Thank you, Brendan. So Xenolith is a Connecticut certified woman-owned business enterprise, and we have offices in New York, in Westchester, New York City, in Westchester, and in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Our Connecticut work stretches from New Britain down to New Haven, and then out through Clinton and into Griswold. So covering a lot of the I-95 corridor. Our projects are also like Gilbane's. They are mixed income and mixed use. We're a much smaller company, but we find that the balance of talents and skills is an important one for us. The project that we did in New Britain, I wanted to mention in particular because it was a brownfield site. It was also TOD. It was on the fast track. It was also an RFP that was awarded by the city of New Britain. And it was one of the first residential passive house projects in Connecticut. And we got the Connecticut Green Build Council's Merit Award for that. So yeah, really happy to be doing more and to be back in Connecticut.
Thanks, Andrea. Newman Architects, we're an architecture firm. We practice architecture, interior design, and lighting design here in New Haven. We've called New Haven our home for just over 60 years. A large part of our practice is centered around multifamily housing, market rate, mixed income, purely affordable housing. So this project is particularly exciting for us because it is in our backyard, but because of the scale of impact that we're looking at here. I'll mention too, to build on what Andrea said, sustainability is very important to us as well, not to compete with her New Britain project, but we recently completed the largest passive house multifamily project in New Haven, or in Connecticut, over in Brantford. That was a affordable senior living project that we're very proud of. I'm sure somebody will follow us up pretty quickly, but sustainability is really at the core of what we do and really informs every decision we make in our design process. So we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the site and community context, give you an idea of what we were thinking about as we started to approach how we would plan the design of the site. I'm not going to dwell too long on the planning and design because I know there will be a lot of questions and information you want about the development itself from the Gilbane and Xenolith team. But the site we're looking at is, as you know, along State Street between, if you can see my mouse, let's see, a little laggy, between Fair Street and Chapel Street. We're looking at what's currently 2 surface parking lots and the northbound piece of State Street that's recently been taken offline. I'm sure you're all aware this is a really great and important site surrounded by a lot of really wonderful community assets, including a lot of open space with the Green and Wooster Square Park, of course, proximity to both Gateway and Gale, quite a lot of local retail, particularly along Crown Street, and several points of interest right around us, including the museum just on Fair Street, of course, the former Coliseum site development, and many others. I'll note here too, we mentioned TOD. Our site is, of course, also right next to the State Street station, and just about a 10-minute walk to the Union Station. So, a really important site for encouraging transit-oriented development and housing close to train stations. In addition to the trains, we're really well connected on the site with a bike and transit network, with many bus lines and bus stops right around our site. The Yale Shuttle, of course, runs right by our site as well. And I know parking will come up. This map also overlays the amount of parking in lots and garages surrounding our site, just as another point of reference. You're probably all very familiar already with the work that's going on State Street, but just for a little orientation, here are the 2 surface parking lots we're looking at with that northbound piece of State Street that's been brought offline in the last few weeks as part of the reconfiguration of State Street, which has been a really important planning element as we've thought about the development of this site. This move will unify our site, but it will also make for a much better street for people to be living, walking, and biking on. It's a little small, so let me know if you want me to zoom in on any of this. But in laying out the site, we've taken a two-phase approach. It was mentioned that we are looking at a site A1, which is at the corner of State and Fair Street, and a site A2, which is at the corner of State and Chapel Street. And so these two buildings, these two sites will be built in a phased approach with a proposed separation, more or less where this red dashed line is showing on the site plan.
Can you make that bigger?
Yes. Can zoom in.
I want to look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a little laggy, so bear with me. But so we'll start with looking at site A2. In both the buildings, you'll see that we're lining the street front along State Street with retail space, as well as resident amenity space. On site A2, that resident amenity space is a bit smaller than on site 1. The balance of the amenity space will be located on upper floors, which I'll show you a plan of in a moment. But really notable on the site A2 is this plaza that we're anticipating over here on Chapel and State Street, where we're set back from Chapel Street, and a larger, what's anticipated to be a programmed public plaza between the two buildings and between the two sites. The primary ingress and egress from our parking garage is going to be along State Street into that site A2. Somebody would enter off of State Street, they can park on this level, or they can take a ramp up to the second level of parking. Scoot over. When site A1 is constructed, there will be additional retail space flanking that public plaza, as well as additional amenity space for the residents. There will also be another at least ingress for the parking, we're imagining, maybe ingress and egress off of Fair Street, allowing for a secondary mode of entering and exiting the parking garage. The additional parking on site A2 will plug right into the parking on site A1, so it'll be one continuous two-level parking garage.
And just to add quickly, because it's hard to read it from this, the parking that Melinda refers to will not read at all as parking from the street. You'll see a building with vibrant ground floor uses with entrances to the parking, but it's effectively shielded from the street by the building itself.
We have a couple sections we'll show that hopefully will help illustrate that too. I did want to point out before we go on to the next slide, both buildings have very significant bicycle rooms in each building. We're envisioning that these would be really sort of prominent bicycle storage and repair spaces for the resident amenity, for the residents as an amenity. In doing this, we're thinking about how bicycle storage is often too small in a lot of these buildings, and often gets relegated to sort of the back of the house of these apartment buildings. And with all of the investment that's going into State Street and really making it a pedestrian and bike-friendly space, we really wanted to celebrate the bicycle and celebrate all of that work that's going on. So we're imagining this will be a really sort of vibrant and engaging part of the streetscape experience for people. Here are a couple images of sort of inspiration for what we imagine some of these seating areas, the bike paths, and the courtyard might look like as they start to really be planned and programmed. So I mentioned there'd be two levels of parking. You'll come in at that ground level, you can ramp up to the second. Right above the parking will be our amenity deck level, where there will be resident units at that level, but there will be additional amenity spaces for all of the residents, as well as a deck above the garage, which will include a pool, green spaces, and other such spaces for the residents there. This is a typical residential level showcasing the distribution of units across the two buildings. I know we've had previous questions about this, so we wanted to certainly show you guys some site sections. And I think this one that I'm zooming in on here is probably the most helpful for really understanding the relationship between the new State Street that's under construction, our building with the 2 levels of parking, the amenity space, in this case, the bicycle storage room, and the larger of the 2 buildings on top, as well as that amenity deck level. And while, I know there might be concerns about noise related to the trains, we actually have quite a bit of distance from the trains from a sectional perspective between where the train lines run and where the units are. And of course, there are many sort of architectural interventions we can take, particularly around what types of windows we're specifying to diminish those potential noise pollutants. Here we have an aerial view of the 2 buildings, and we've changed perspective a little bit here. So just to reorient you, we have Chapel Street, where my mouse is slowly moving towards, State Street and Fair Street. So the taller of the 2 buildings is at site A1, and the lower of the 2 buildings is at site A2, with that public plaza at the center. And the second site that Mike had mentioned earlier on George Street is just represented by this gray block down here. We can get a sense of where that Glendower site is in relation to ours. So we'll flip through a few quick renderings. Here we're looking at the taller of the 2 buildings. We're looking north on State Street. Start to get a sense of what that streetscape will really feel like. We're still pretty early on in the design process, certainly for this for the taller building, but we want to try to do something a little bit different. We want to try to do something that'll bring some life to State Street and reinvigorate it in the way that it deserves. This is a view looking down Crown Street at the taller of the 2 buildings, again, right into our retail space. We really saw this as an opportunity to sort of pay homage to the tower, the iconic tower in the 9th Square that you see many pictures of the 9th Square right now, as a way to sort of cap the end of all of that retail and activity that's happening on Crown Street, and really make our proposed building part of that economic activity that's happening down there. Just off of Crown Street, you see our proposal for the public plaza that sits between the 2 buildings. We made sure to flank the public plaza with the retail spaces, imagining, we don't know what'll go in those spaces yet, but we imagine that there's a possibility of restaurants, cafes, other spaces that can really spill out onto and make use of that public plaza. We've located our pool for the residents right above the plaza, really trying to engage activity across the levels as well, from the street level to above that parking garage. And here's a view of the lower of the 2 buildings. Now we're standing on the corner of Chapel and State, looking south, where you see we've stepped the building back right at that corner of Chapel Street to try to create a larger public space, potentially public gathering space, to really, welcome people into the building, welcome people down State Street. Across all the views, you'll see that there's quite a bit of transparency at the ground floor, and we're really trying to provide as much window and light as possible into the units at the levels above. I'll hand it over to Brendan now.
So as Mike referenced, obviously the State Street realignment has been a process, has been in motion for a long time. It's finally coming to fruition. And this is the first site adjacent to that improvement that is taking hold and getting to the DLDA phase. I think the timing couldn't be better for being coordinated with our process and pre-development phase for getting started on construction of the first phase of this, just as the State Street realignment work is coming to completion for this segment of State Street. And for this first phase, we would just be taking possession of the land as spelled out in the DLDA for the first phase of the project, and the second phase of the project, conveyance of the land would not happen until the point at which we were ready to close on financing. Of course, the city would retain ownership over that second phase until our milestones for development are met and we're ready to close. We're moving along the necessary pre-development steps in order to demise the land into two separate parcels. And of course, part of the conversation, and it's always part of our approach in development, is to make sure that we are hiring locally, not just at the minimum levels, but as much as possible. So we've of course studied workforce development ordinances, so I'm going to move back to this. I can't quite see the screen. Both, for local hiring of individuals and businesses. I think one of the benefits that we have as a consolidated development and construction company is that we've tested out a lot of different ways of doing local hiring, both of businesses and individuals. So I think we have a pretty big playbook to draw from, and making sure that we're maximizing that in every instance. Of course, can you see what the last bullet point is? I think we're transcribing over it. Yeah, so I mean, in compliance with all of this, is integrated into our plans and milestones to make sure that we're hitting all the municipal goals at a minimum, but hopefully exceeding them. So, I won't go deep into this because I think Melinda touched on most of these points, but the first development is not less than 147 units, mixed income with not less than 25% affordable units. Those units will be funded through the State Housing Finance Agency. So it would be a range of different income served for the affordable units, averaging out to 60% of area median income, but ranging from 30% up to 80%. And then unrestricted market units. The second phase would be a similar mix, but with the likely addition of a workforce housing component in addition to that 25%, with units likely in the 90 to 100% of AMI range. So serving a pretty wide swath of the income spectrum in the entirety of the development. And, as Melinda has described, we see the retail as really critical to the development from a variety of points of view. Obviously, that's a big part of invigorating the corridor. And, we've already begun conversations with brokers and folks who understand the retail market here to make sure that we're not just down the line figuring out what retail is going to be, but designing to what we want it to be. And, we I think want a mix of uses that's going to have feet on the street during the day, but also activation in the evening hours, so that it's really sort of a around the clock development that has vibrant retail. And we see that as part of a strategy to not just invigorate the surrounding area, but to provide an amenity for tenants, because people want to live in a building that's an active place, that's a destination for other people. And we're excited about that because I think that's a benefit that accords to everyone that lives in the building, market rate tenants and affordable tenants. So, everybody I think is benefiting from that. Additionally, we can go into parking, but the total development has, this feels like a bit of a vision test for me. 156 spaces. Didn't bring my readers, I don't know if it'll help. All told, and we, from a zoning point of view, there aren't any parking spaces required here. And from a sustainability point of view, we'd like to be in a place where there's minimal parking, but we also have to balance that with the reality of people having cars still in 2025. So we want to have enough parking to be able to serve the needs of tenants and have the units be marketable, but not overparked, so that we have like all this square footage that's valuable living space that's dedicated to places for cars to live. So we think we've struck a pretty good balance, and I think that we're also aided by the fact that as one example, right across the street is the State Street garage, which has some vacancy in it, so there's some overflow parking capacity that's directly across the street. And I won't walk you through all the elements of the schedule, but, we've, what's not laid out here is that we've been working on this for at this point, more than a year. But, we're targeting getting this to financial closing and getting shovels in the ground in Q3 of 2026, and being finished with the first phase 2 years after that. And then, starting shortly thereafter at the latest on phase 2. We're very excited to move forward on this. These are complicated times to do development. It's always complicated, but particularly for a project that mixes affordable and market rate units and requires some public resources, but also private equity. We all read the same newspapers. The economic climate right now is at best, a little shaky and a little mercurial. So we're really excited to get to the closing table on this as quickly as possible so that we can move forward and I can really show the impact that this building can have on people and the neighborhood. I think that's the last slide. Right?
Yep.
I want to thank you for your time and listening to the full depth of the presentation here. You have the full development agreement in front of you with our standard terms and conditions, also the preconditions to close, which are very important here because it's, it's sort of one big parcel, but it's two separate parcels. Get the first one done, move to the next parcel right away, and there's great efficiency with that, if you will. So the preconditions are set forth, and as Brendan said, the biggest one is locking in the financing. And as consistent with the development agreements we've done in the past on affordable housing projects, we are a partner in that regard. So you'll recall a few months ago, we presented with David Corris from the state of Connecticut on the new state programs that are coming forward. So things like Build for CT, we've never really talked about Build for CT at this table, but this gives you a sense for all of the new resources that are going to help us close the gap to make sure that these projects remain affordable. The other other document you should have in front of you is the City Plan Commission report, which is number 1669-14, which is one of the required advisory reports that you have as you move through the process. So with that, I'll turn it to Mark to see if there's anything we missed in just the general run overview, and then we can talk to the Q&A.
No, if you don't have all any questions on the DLTA, but we'll be happy to answer them.
Colleagues, any questions? Doing good?
Thank you for your presentation. It's very hard to listen to all the presentation and then respond. But we did it. We did it. But my question is around, I have two questions. The mixed use, is that subject to change as years go by? And my second question is really my biggest interest around who builds the project, right? Like, I'm big on local hiring, big on local support. We have something called New Haven Works here, those kind of things. So my interest truly is around the development process of this. Who's going to be on the site? How will we know about, we meeting the minimum or above, as you said, above the criterias of what we're doing in the city of New Haven, because, we prime real estate right now. I understand it, right? If y'all came together to do this, it's a big deal, right? So I want our people in the city to be a part of it and benefit from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as I said, we it's our goal to try to hire locally, both individuals and firms as much as possible. And we can structure a couple different ways, with us as a company being the general contractor or another firm, and that's to be determined. But in any case, we always bring that expertise of the examples that we've benefited from in the past of how to hire locally and how to engage with folks early on in the process so that we know who the pool of contractors is, and we know where to plug in order to be able to do outreach to folks who who has the construction experience and want to work at a site like this, and to do that as a general contractor and to do it through subcontractors. So, to give you one example of the way that we sort of try to plant seeds for future partners in local businesses is we have what's called, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's basically Gilbane Building University, where we have a training regimen for smaller contractors to come in and understand how to go from doing that 20-unit plumbing job to doing a 50-unit plumbing job. So that's one of the things that we do to try to set folks up for success to be able to bid on our projects. Another is trying to look at what we do not as something that's only fit for a scale contractor that can do a 150 or a 300-unit building, but looking at how we can take the building and break the construction into smaller pieces in order to enable smaller firms to be able to take on a piece that they can handle, rather than just be shut out from it because they haven't done a building that's 150 plus units before. So we have a lot of different ways we can approach it, but it's an important part of what we do. And we've done it even when there aren't local requirements. And we've shared at the RFQ stage some of the examples of it that we've done in the past, meeting or exceeding those levels. So it's important to us, and we'll report obviously on progress, and you'll see that we take it seriously.
I think it's interesting to note that Gilbane oversaw school construction in the city of New Haven 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And at that time, they had a project labor agreement with the unions as far as hiring, that they were mandated to have and meet certain goals that the city had laid out. And at that time, I worked for the Department of Commission on Equal Opportunities, and I could say that they exceeded their goals at that time. Though it was a different division, different than housing. They do have an extensive playbook, as Brendan said, to pull from. So I think that I'm sure that they will exceed our expectations for local hiring.
Alderman Day?
Thank you, Chair. It would be beneficial for me to see that agreement that was made 20 years ago. I don't know if Mr. Al Lucas can get that, or the director, because I only been here 16. It'll be beneficial for me to see that as we move forward, because maybe we can look at something and how great they did with the project that we can implement now in 2025. And I did have one more question.
Just to close that one out as well, 20 years ago, there was New Haven Works, and that is now permanency in our development agreements. So early job fairs, Tyra was the current construction contact person to make sure that the program goals and the monitoring is in place.
No, the second question I asked, it wasn't answered.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I asked two questions.
But mixed use, whether it was going to change over time, is that?
Absolutely.
The short answer is no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you mean the retail, or you mean the mix of the affordability
The
and
mix
the?
of affordability.
Yeah.
The mix of affordability over time.
Yeah, so the affordability is restricted for, at the minimum, the low-income housing tax credit compliance period, and the extended compliance period is 30 years. So at a minimum for 30 years, it will remain affordable housing.
Thank you.
Alderman Edwards? Thank you, Alderman.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one question. We were talking about how one parcel is going to start and the city's going to retain the other parcel and then hand it off. I saw the timeline where the second parcel was possibly going to do the financial closing and all that good stuff in 2028. Is that the agreed upon period, or is that subject to change?
So we always appreciate the opportunity to be both transparent and honest with you as we go through these journeys, right? So the way it's set up, and we went back and forth with the development team, was their line of sight to get started on construction on the property at Chapel and State is very close. So that's the first one. And we're all going to work very, very hard. So as that wraps up, we go right into construction on phase 2. But there are new funding sources because there's more affordability there. Build for CT is new for us. So we wanted to make sure we have a little cushion in the schedule in case that took a little bit longer to get done. But it's conceivable as construction goes that maybe interest rates come down a little bit and everything just moves forward, if you will. And the development agreement allows us to do that. It allows us to go right into the next phase. So you'll see like trucks and wood and construction staging material on the other side. But if it goes well, maybe we are able to move a little bit quicker.
So 2028 is a tentative date based on if all the financials and everything flows through properly and in a timely fashion.
That's right. And the development agreement is structured such that we protect the city's interest by holding on to the land and the developer as well in case it just doesn't work out. But I think we all feel good about where we wouldn't bring it to you unless we felt like the funding sources and the partners who have to help close the gap aren't going to be with us on this. And I think the state funding the road has helped a lot because you've got a lot of focus from our state partners.
Okay, so I think you may have answered part A/B of my question too, meaning what is our cutoff date if things go ugly? So I know you can't definitively answer that, but we have something in place where we're not gonna just be in a loop forever.
Yeah, there are a series of default provisions
Okay.
in the development. We come at it from a place of optimism, but yeah, we do have those protections.
And then my other kind of comment / question, Madam Chair, would just be through the chair, as usual, where we speak about Gilbane University and just the processes in which they use, and of course the job fairs and how we have everything set up with community notification, is just to make sure through you, we get all that information so we can also distribute to our networks. That is all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And thank you for saying that again. That triggered that I misdescribed that. It's called Gilbane Rising Contractors Program.
That's cute too.
I like the baby version.
That's the one where I learned stuff to make me smarter that I haven't actually done yet. Yeah.
So we talked about the university and ensuring that our residents know what's available and how they can apply for some of these opportunities on the workforce. How are we going to ensure, because there's a lot of work happening on Chapel Street, as you know, Director Piscatelli, and I know that a lot of residents want to ensure that if there's a detour or anything else, and I know you guys have been doing a phenomenal job, but we have, just a few folks that get very nervous. And so just ensuring that whatever traffic incidents that may happen that you did not expect, definitely letting our city partners know so that we can send it out out to the whole city, because everybody utilizes the area. I'm also going to say that I want to thank you all, because you did have a meeting across the way where not only did you get residents from the downtown corridor, but you also got residents that came over from the hill section of the city, because this is what we're building, and also East Rock and everybody else. So it was great to see the number of folks that were at the meeting across the street that I attended, as well as my colleague Olda Sabin, that you answered their questions and their concerns appropriately. So starting off like that, I really appreciate this coming forward. I know that there were questions at that time also in the design of the building, because obviously there's a lot of small lots there. And so you addressed concerns, and we also discussed the cost of what it would cost for you guys to build the complex the way it does. I know that we have a lot of architecture downtown that is probably much older than I am. And I know that was a particular question that came up, but I think that cost was a huge factor in order to be able to build this building. If we were to use different material, then the cost would end up onto the residents. And so, a lot of folks, we heard that last time, and we want to ensure that it's a different design, it's modern, but we also want to think about folks that are looking for affordable downtown New Haven and ensuring that, and I know right now in this moment, the cost of materials probably skyrocketed. So you thought that the design would come into play so that it could be affordable for the residents. That was my understanding previously. Okay, thank you. That was my only concern. Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? No? Thank you so much for your presentation this evening. We appreciate it. I know we have another item on the
I
agenda.
believe there's also some people here to testify.
Absolutely.
On this item, so we'll be available at any remaining Q&A. Thank you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, we are definitely gonna call anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item. No? At the end? Okay, hold on one second. We have an additional item. Would you mind? Go ahead. Okay, actually, we're gonna have from the public, anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item, please come forward. And you
want
can,
all testifiers to come
yes,
at the same time.
you can, if you wanna come and join, that's fine, or you can do your, whichever way you'd like.
Okay.
Either way, I'd like name and address for the record on those who are testifying on this item. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this very important project, development project for New Haven. My name is Jeff Spiritos. I live at 360 State Street. I am a developer, building 2 projects in New Haven. Very grateful to the mayor and the economic development group, Michael's group, that really focus on trying to build high-quality housing that is sustainable, that is long-term, because it's inclusionary, that has put New Haven in a position where it is looked at throughout the country as the one that focuses most on policy and incentives that support the combination of inclusionary housing in a meaningful way with local hiring, as well as passive house, solar panels, mass timber, with the prior head of city planning developing, along with others in the city, the zoning that supported extra FAR bonus capabilities for building taller and more square footage for developers who focused on and cared about building that combination of housing equity and sustainable practices. Our 2 projects, thanks to the city of New Haven and the state of Connecticut, and also under the leadership of Mayor Elker, who's critical to the vision here, is Acme Timber Lofts on Crown Street, a block away, preserved a 150-year-old building, the Acme Furniture Building, and put 2 floors of mass timber on top of it, salvaging many of the artifacts, the 2 elevator machines and others that are now at the Lost in New Haven Museum. And the other project, thanks also to the leadership in New Haven, is the 340 plus Dixwell project with BoA Land Development and Health Development USA out of New York City. We are the 3rd developers, 3rd properties. We're the mass timber developer. We're the ones who are leading the construction of the project. It's been challenging in a number of ways, but thanks to the support, unfailing support of the city and the state, we're nearing completion of that project, and it's going to be extraordinary for the residents of the Dixwell community who will not be displaced. And it's 80% from folks experiencing homelessness all the way up to 60% AMI, as you know quite well. And again, just want to really give hats off to those that are sitting behind us now, Mark and Carlos and Michael and the mayor, really for that leadership. And it's all in the sustainable housing aspect of this. So as a neighbor looking down on this site and as a building owner 1/2 block west of this site, we have a real interest in what's being proposed for development here. And I'd like to ask some questions about it. Maybe the developer will be able to reply, and then to make some observations as well. So I don't know if I have like a 3-minute limit or what the limit is, but I'd like, and I can move faster if we need to do that. So first question is this the phase 1 project on Chapel?
Mr.
I think it is.
Would you like to join us?
They're saying,
Yeah, without.
they're saying yes in the background.
No?
Just let them ask the question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
They'll take it down and come back.
Okay.
Thank
They'll
you.
come back on
I'd like to know how long each building is in terms of its footage and how tall each building is in terms of its total height to the top of the roof. These are long projects. These are projects that impact the urban planning for 9 Square and the view from the highway, the view from the bay, and really the appearance of the city of New Haven through and above these buildings. It's real challenging from an urban planning standpoint because they are so long and so tall. And hats off to the city for its foresight in using underutilized and non-land, which doesn't have to displace residents in order to make this work. That's a real visionary approach. However, the solution, I'm concerned, is put together in a way that in order to be able to achieve the economics requires the height and the composition, and really is making, I would say, a potentially detrimental impact for long-term urban planning and character of New Haven. Now, there are ways to address this, and I want to say as well that I'm 100% in favor of the project and all that it stands for. So really, this is all about how we go from where the powers that be have taken it so far to where it might be able to be taken in a way that makes it still very viable, but really improves porosity, perhaps adds more sustainable materials as part of its structure, and really achieves New Haven's goals of being a low carbon, forward thinking city. So I don't know how to really go about that. I would say that I would like to understand what state funding sources are going to be utilized or anticipated to be utilized. Is it low-income housing tax credits from CHAFLA? Is it Department of Housing? Is it the 4% tax credits that are much more available these days because of the way that this current presidential administration has made those available? Would like to understand that more. I want to understand if the 157 total parking spaces are an obligation.
30 seconds.
Okay, great, thank you. And to be able to work with the Board of Alders, the city, and the developer to try to find a way to make this project the best that it can be.
Thank you.
Thank
Name and address for the record?
I am Robert Greenberg,
And I live at 4 Chestnut Hill, Branford, Connecticut. I grew up in New Haven. I lived in New York City for 26 years, and I moved back here to build a museum. So I know the history of this street, and better than anyone, because in 1968, my grandfather's buildings that were on this site were taken by eminent domain. We have 5 buildings on that structure. I'd like to just show you a quick photo that I have from our collection. This is the land in which that building will go on. Okay? Now you're getting a past image. We had the most diverse architecture in the United States before urban renewal. If you notice down here, this is where Alexander Graham Bell invented the first telephone exchange, first time. One of the problems with this project, while I am very into the development of this site, is number one, I do not believe that the developers are recognizing the amazing history that was here on this piece of land. This 9 squares that were laid out in 1641, if you take Google Earth and put it to that original John Brockett map, have not changed since 1641. I have an issue with that density of this structure, of these 2 structures. I believe, knowing that land better than anyone, that it's going to cause a quagmire in the 9 squares. The parking, the flow of the city is going to be slowed down in there. I have a whole bunch of points here that I put out. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I feel that the lack of acknowledgement of the history of the site. I'm building a museum, and I have kids coming into that museum right now. All the school kids are starting to flow in there as we're slowly opening it. And what I'm discovering is that these young people don't know anything or very little about the amazing facts of this city. Now, I left New York to come here and to help tell this story and leave it for future generations. This land means a lot to me, especially because of the way it was taken from my grandfather. I applaud the development. I do. I believe the buildings are too tall. I believe they're too dense. I personally am not fond of the design. I think that if you're coming in from I-91 and 95 and you're looking at the beautiful skyline of New Haven, you're about to build a wall. If you're coming down from Crown Street, and Jeff Spirito's here, bought my father's building and did an amazing thing there. He preserved that structure. What I feel is happening here is they're not acknowledging the structures across the street. They're not acknowledging the F.D. Graves building, or the Titleman Cash Register building, or the building where the soup kitchen was just put in, or the Cafe 9 building. So you have a wall being built, not acknowledging the historical references that we could have. I have literally thousands of photos like this. The architects could come in and use these photos and try to emulate some form of the past. When you're coming in from the highway, you're about to wall off this city. You're going to wall it off. You have 360 State on one side. You're about to build a development on George Street. You're going to shadow out the whole 9 square, the 9 square. So, I have one more thing here. The names of these buildings make absolutely no sense to me. One of them is called the Iron. Well, you had the Chatfield Paper Company on the same site. I think the Chatfield is an amazing name. They're not using the references of these historical sites. You can put plaques on these buildings and say what was once here. Young people will start to learn about what was in this city once. The other site, and I brought this reference right here, the site of the first telephone exchange, okay, and that building, before it was torn down, was called the Metropolitan Building. So you have these magnificent references that you can refer back to. And I think that what I'm starting to have a problem with is the city is building all over the place. The buildings all look the same. There's nothing unique about them. I have been saying for years, go to the High Line in New York and look at diverse architecture. Not that we could afford to build that kind of architecture, but there is something not characteristic of the designs. So I'm fearful, and having worked at my father's company
most of my young life delivering furniture all over New Haven. My fear at this moment is the flow around that structure, the delivery to that building. I don't see the society turning into an all bicycle society. I think we're still gonna have cars. That's a big flow point in and out of the city. And my fear is you're gonna start to quagmire the city. You're gonna shatter it. And I just want to state for the record that this was my grandfather's land, and I feel very strongly about it having historical reference. And the height of these buildings, I just think are way too big for that site. And so, in conclusion, I just want to say one other thing. When these buildings are displaced, there will be archaeological material around them. And we need to recognize the things that we are displacing here in New Haven. I just want that out for the record. And I would encourage you all to come to Lost in New Haven at any time and see me referencing what these sites mean to all of us. So thank you, and thank you for letting me make these comments.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My grandfather's on track.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If we can have Director Piscatelli and the developers come up now so we can have those questions answered.
If you can get on, just to this email.
Just wanted to thank you for inviting us back up to answer. First of all, both Robert and Jeff, incredible development partners here in the city. So we take every one of those comments extremely seriously. And also, as you know, over the years, the design of buildings matters a lot here. Aisha Woods, if she was here with us today, would say the buildings are too short. Like, it's just, the design perspectives are all over the place in our city. We do our level best to make sure that we get it right. Just a couple of things out the gate in reflection and thoughtfulness about how we arrived at the design that it is. First, Newman Architecture, people may remember Herb Newman Architecture. So the name got shortened, but the firm who's designing this building designed the renovations to the 9th Square. So when 9th Square was a bunch of warehouses, was sort of falling into disrepair, Happy Furniture was one of the last real viable retail built, stores in the district. Newman's firm did that initial renovation, and I think has stood the test of time, much like our building. Newman was the designer of record to the renovations of City Hall. And so the understanding of historical context and the quality of the firm made a big difference in our selection here. Likewise, on sustainability, they have one of the largest sustainability practices of any of the firms that are local. And then there is a section in the development agreement which in part parallels the standards for the state funding, which the team will talk about in a minute, but also some of our local values around making sure that we have bike and transit access, enough registration, windows. So all of that is in the development agreement in section 4.5. And that draws quite a bit from the board's order or resolution, I believe it was, on climate change and the climate emergency. So that is paralleled in the development agreement. I'll pause there because I actually do honestly forget the square footage of the building. It's a lot, it's not as big as say like 360 State Street, but Melinda and the team can talk a little bit more about the massing and how we arrived at it.
Yeah, I'd have to definitely follow up on the exact length and height of the buildings because I don't have those offhand, but the phase 1 building is 7 stories. The phase 2 building is 12 stories right now, as shown in the renderings and sections that you have in your package. Our phase 1 building's just under 160,000 gross square feet, and our phase 2 building is just under 322,000 gross square feet. I want to thank you, Mike, for the kind words about Newman's history in the city of New Haven, the 9th Square in particular. because sure, historic context is very important to us in every project, and more so in projects where, the Ninth Square is part of our history too, and we're a new generation at Newman that takes our firm's history very seriously. And that was one of the reasons I pointed out, really wanting to draw upon that iconic tower in the Ninth Square. That was Herb Newman's design. We know it's such an iconic element in the Ninth Square, and so it's something we very much wanted to draw on, and sort of trying to figure out a way to cap Crown Street here in our Phase 2 building. I will say, in terms of design, we're really early in the design process. What we're working through right now is really trying to get a project that is feasible, certainly financially feasible from a density perspective, from a funding perspective, which Brendan and Andrea can speak to more. Certainly, once we have a feasible project under our belts and are ready to move forward, the design process will become much more intensive, and we'll get much more specific. So, we were grateful to have Robert join at least one of our community sessions that we held about this project. And afterwards, a group from our firm went to his museum, and we were actually very inspired from everything we learned at his museum, that all of the artifacts and information he has, not just on our site, but on the general area surrounding our site. We are by no means precious about the names of the buildings. Honestly, they were thought of very quickly during the RFQ process, and I don't think those will be the names that are eventually marketed on the buildings. But I will say that, once we really dive into the design, there will be a lot more work on not only the articulation of the exterior of the building, but on the identities of the building. And we very much plan on drawing on the history of the site and a lot of what Robert has to offer to inspire the interior design, the identities and brands of each building separately, and the development as a whole. And we're honestly always looking for opportunities to educate people who are living in the buildings and who are just passing by the buildings, whether it's about the history of the site or, we quite often incorporate educational elements about the sustainability of our buildings in signage and the interior design. So we're really looking forward to digging into that. I wanted to touch on Jeff's comment as well about porosity. I think you saw in the renderings, we are really trying to have a lot of transparency at the ground floor. Certainly the retail spaces, the amenity spaces, even the bicycle storage, you might not be able to see directly into all of the bicycles for safety purposes, for the bicycle storage, but we're already thinking about ways we can sort of express that there's something special related to bicycle infrastructure happening behind, this section of the building, to still really engage everybody at the street. I think porosity is an interesting question because so much of the length of our site just actually has train tracks right behind it. And so our focus on porosity has really been on Chapel Street and Fair Street, and really thinking about how we can improve the pedestrian experience on those blocks to really, to your point earlier, Alder Rodriguez, really weave together the Ninth Square, Wooster Square, and certainly the Hill.
Well, just to close that section, so section 4.2 of the development agreement is our requirements around design review. So we provide guidance at a point in the process. It's led by Laura Brown, the city plan director, and we would invite both Robert, Jeff, the Knights of Columbus, and the Ninth Square community into that process, so that we consolidate a lot of comments and make sure that the team has our best assessment of the design as they move forward.
Thank you.
If I may, I just wanted to add a few comments to what Melinda already shared. And first off, we really appreciate the input, and and certainly the history and that has informed that input. I think just starting off with the question of density, I think is critical in the right places in the right measure. I don't have to tell any of you that we're in the midst of a housing crisis. Part of the reason why that housing crisis exists is because there isn't plentiful enough housing, which obviously drives prices in the market up generally. And those price impacts are felt most acutely by people who are lower income. Density allows us to build a degree of housing that helps to alleviate that crisis. And I think this is a great site for that. I think we don't approach it as like density at whatever cost. We want to do it in a way that's contextually appropriate, that respects what's around it, that's tasteful, that engages the street base, that's not too high in relation to things that are reference points in the neighborhood. And we feel that this combination of buildings at 7 stories, which is very typical for its surroundings, and then 12 stories, which is a little higher, but certainly not the highest in the neighborhood, is a reasonable density to get at, especially since we're really not on the rear of the property. As Melinda said, we're not right up against other properties. We're up against the rail infrastructure. And we think that bringing people to this site is also, I think, a real positive contributor to the redevelopment of the neighborhood, which is another thing that density aids. And on the question of parking, as I mentioned before, parking is always obviously a contentious issue. Is it too little? Is it too much? From a zoning point of view, there isn't any parking required on the site. But I think being realistic to the needs of people in 2025, you need some parking at the site. We don't want to over-design it and have excessive parking at the site. So we think that at the ratio that we have, which is about a third of a space to an apartment, we think we're at a reasonable ratio that's comparable to other properties in the neighborhood. And we'll meet the parking need. And part of the equation too is the overflow parking that does exist in private and public facilities in the neighborhood. We also have incorporated some functions, like Melinda said, with the bicycle parking. Not everybody's going out and trading in their car for a bicycle, certainly. But some people are deciding, okay, well, I'm going to get, myself included, instead of getting a second car, I'm going to get a cargo bicycle. Maybe there's pedal assist in it, so that you can go get the kids to school a little faster. So, part of what we incorporated into this is storage for next generation bicycles. To make sure that we have enough storage, that it's front facing, that it's prioritized in the building, and also EV infrastructure in the parking lot, so that we have EV stations for electric vehicles, and then a number of spaces that are also enabled for EV as the technology develops and more people have electric vehicles. And that's all stipulated in the DLDA. And on the topic of history, we appreciate that. I think, as Melinda said, Newman visited Mr. Greenberg's museum and got some inspiration and information from it. And, I would say, like, absolutely the iron and the frontier are not names. Developers and architects should not name buildings. That's sort of one of my rules of thumb. It should be informed by something else. So those are really placeholder names, and I would welcome a conversation about the history of the site and the neighborhood that can inform those names. And I think taking a step beyond that, I would, I'll reach out and follow up, but I think it would be really fascinating if there was some way that we could incorporate some of Mr. Greenberg's learnings into the building itself, both externally available to the public and internal to the building. We want that kind of texture and acknowledgement of history in the building. And outside of the building, we have a public plaza here. There's a lot of great ways that we could really sort of have the building speak to its history and vice versa. So we'll reach out to have that conversation and see if there's a way to collaborate on this.
There was one more question about the state funding sources.
Yes. So I wrote that down too, and I forgot about it. So the state funding sources are 4% low-income housing tax credits, which through the recent federal legislation, one of the positive elements of that was that the amount of tax exempt debt is the amount of tax exempt debt that's necessary to trigger certain funding of tax credits is now less than it was before. So the same pot of tax exempt debt can go further. That's good news. It doesn't mean we have twice the funding. It just means that funding is more available to the project, which is a good thing. And we're also counting on flex funds from the state housing agency to support those low-income units, and then permanent debt, likely through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mae, one of the government-sponsored entities, providing guarantees on that, and then outside private equity helping to fund the market rate portion.
Thank you.
Hello. So, thank you for the update. The gentlemen are still here. I want to also thank you for stating definitely connecting with Mr. Greenberg and teaching. And you talked about amenities and having public amenities for folks to see what was and what the future is transpiring. And 30 to 40 years from now, there is gonna be a group of people in this room having similar conversations on how things are revolving and changing, but it would be great to hear what the history is in New Haven of many folks that are no longer with us, but that we want to preserve what they knew in their history. So working together with that public amenity space, I think would be fabulous. So we appreciate that information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys wanna keep this here? Just keep it down? Okay.
You also keep papers.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're voting on it today.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yeah, the meeting.
We have now the second item.
One day.
Good evening, name and address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. Carlos Azaguirre, Deputy Economic Development Administrator for the City of New Haven, reside at 244 McKinley Avenue in New Haven. Thank you. Are you going to read the resolution or we're good? Okay. So you guys know we're here.
Yes, we are.
I did. No, thank you so much for allowing me to testify today on behalf of this resolution.
If I can have, we're going to start our next presentation, so we're going to ask folks to have, I appreciate the energy. We'll have you guys, if you don't mind. Thank you all. Our apologies.
Oh, that's okay. This item is, you heard just now about a larger piece of the city's housing and affordable housing strategy. This resolution here is a smaller part of that same, affordable housing strategy that, that sort of underlies a lot of what we were talking about tonight. This is an application, this is a resolution to apply and accept a $250,000 CIF planning grant, round 5 planning grant from the Department of Economic and Community Development at the state of Connecticut, Just a little background. I mean, it's obviously you already know, as New Haven's population is approaching 140,000 people for the first time in decades. It's the highest it's been in decades. So we have this growing population. You guys also know, I think all of you were up on the board, or at least for last year, some of the conversation last year, at least, for the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that was passed in 2021, I believe. I know we've had some other conversations with you in 2024 on what we're calling maybe phase 2 of that ADU legislation. So that's sort of the background here of what this grant that we're applying for is about. Is to apply and accept this $250,000 grant to create what we're calling an ADU toolkit, and that's to explore the design and engineering of an ADU template, which can be replicated across the city, and allow us to design and allow residents all over the city to design an ADU that's most compliant with current building codes and zoning. As you know, that the initial ordinance that we passed for ADUs with your support has not yielded the amount of ADUs that we might have hoped, right? And that's because it's complicated. They're expensive. Even they're cheaper than building a new house, a new larger house, but they're still expensive for most of us. So this is an opportunity to really create sort of a citywide program, internal, that we would then, could share with all residents to sort of make the design and engineering of an ADU on your property cheaper and more accessible. So that's sort of what this planning grant will allow us to do. Allow us to work with some consultants, allow us to work with our zoning officials and our building official, and design something that works. Some designs that work best for us. Just quick, if you don't mind, some benefits of the ADUs that we think are important. Are this is it, talking about our growing population and the growing demand for housing that we can't meet right now. The development of more ADUs increases the affordable rental options in all neighborhoods by making it easier for property owners to add to the supply of housing and keep pace with demand without needing new land, without having to demolish existing, perhaps historic buildings, things like that. For our seniors, it allows them to age in place, so they can. We're seeing a little more of that, where seniors are moving into what's called an in-law apartment, and their younger relatives may be living in the larger house, so that allows seniors to age in place. Also works for folks similarly with disabilities as well, because it allows us, allows folks to build a small unit with someone that might have mobility issues and allow them to live there. It's also passive income for a lot of our property owners if we do create more of these, because they can rent it out and gain some income from that. It also helps preserve a lot of the historic housing in our neighborhoods by providing more housing for the growing population without removing some of the existing buildings. So those are some of the reasons why we think it's important. We're really excited to have the opportunity to do this. I know we have some more work on the ordinance. You guys have been providing guidance on on how that ordinance might look in the next phases. I know there's some things we want to still work out to make it easier, but also make sure we're protecting neighborhoods when we are creating more ADUs. So some of the other interesting things that we think we could do with this grant money is it would allow us to establish partnerships with contractors and housing nonprofits to develop maybe a sustainable grant and loan model to subsidize the development of ADUs for residents. So that's something else that we think we would grow out of this ADU toolkit plan, which we'll be happy to ultimately present to maybe our city plan commission if we adopt it that way, or something we present to the board of aldermen as well, like we've done for some of our other plans. So that's sort of the long and short of it. We're excited for the opportunity to potentially have this money for our team, but we of course need permission from the board to apply and accept it.
Any questions from any?
I have a question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. To start the hearing. I don't know if this applies to this grant, but would any portion of this, or are there any plans to look at existing properties that currently have structures on it where people are living that may not be built with permits, violation of building codes, violation of fire codes, or just overcrowded and causing unsafe situations in neighborhoods? Because I know in my ward especially, I have a lot of those.
Sure.
A lot of those are sometimes old garages that are just retrofitted, and sometimes you've got 8-10 people living in them. I want to know if we can somehow identify those neighborhood by neighborhood and bring them online to make them legal and possibly put them in the pipeline of tax revenue.
Thanks, Alder Redenti. I know exactly what you're getting at, having worked for LCI and done some of that work as well. So no, the grant application that we wrote for CIF doesn't specifically contemplate like using it for enforcement, but I didn't mention it, but one of the other big components of this grant is that this would allow us to do real community outreach, pay for it, do more robust community outreach, allow us to go, not maybe every neighborhood, but target some neighborhoods, talk to residents, see what is out there in the housing stock, see who might be what properties might be good candidates for ADU development. And I think that would then give us the opportunity, certainly in places where we know there's unpermitted overcrowding. I don't want to say it's illegal, but unpermitted overcrowding, and where we know this would give us the opportunity to go out to these neighborhoods, do that outreach, and then in turn, of course, identify that stuff, which we would then enforce for life safety reasons.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Directors?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If we get this grant, do we have an estimated date of when it would pay out and when it will go into effect as far as us trying to get it together with outreach and everything like that, or putting our program fully together?
Well, that's always in this case, $250,000 question, because it is an assistance agreement from the state of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of these in the hopper, and there's a lot of rules, and our nonprofits are also waiting for some of these grants as well as they win CI grants. So I don't think we have a timeline. It's always a little bit based on the state's timeline. They have their lawyer, they have their own lawyers that draft this stuff like we would for the agreements we do. I think we have most of them almost in place, at least on the economic development side. So assuming that we do this, fairly quickly, let's say in a handful of months, we can really hit the ground running on doing the project management side. I think we'd be ready to go. I mean, I think it was already a year ago that Director Brown was here. She's really eager to do phase 2 of the ADU legislation, but you guys understandably have questions about some of the impacts. So this would, I think, help us sort of figure out things like the owner occupancy issue, which is really an issue of the day, about whether, expanding the ADU ordinance. So I think we're ready to go on our side. I think the funding is always a little dependent on the state of Connecticut, but again, they have a system for dispersing this money.
Part A/B, which you already led up to. Mm-hmm. So currently, although we don't have, like you said, you may be ready to go. Is the plan currently in the minds of, our great department to align this with our current situation and not anticipating that approval or the extension of a Part B with our ADUs? Because that's a concern.
Yeah, I know you're. So I think, and I was looking at when I was reading through it. I think with the terms we use would be compliant. The term we use would be the most. Hold on a second. Allows us to design an ADU most compliant with all current building codes and zoning. So this would not be. So yes, obviously, because I think some of the things like no owner occupant won't necessarily. There are a few things right about how the lot size that are also under discussion with the Board of Alders, and there's different views on that with folks in the community. But yes, I mean, so that would also. But I think a lot of it is the owner occupancy issue, so that we can. Again, this would all be. We're envisioning this toolkit would be compliant with what's on the books now, and then obviously be able to pivot should we have to a more expanded program.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Thank you, because you answered in the interim there your question, my question, excuse me, about ADUs. So this item before us is you are applying for a grant, and then have further discussion with residents and see how we can utilize this and move forward. Okay. Any other questions from community members? Thank you so much for giving us that information.
Thank you so much, Alice, for the opportunity.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? And for a second time, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? And for a third and final time, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
I move we close the public portion.
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. Okay. Colleagues, discussion on the two items before us? No? Okay.
No, he's asking for discussion on the.
I'd like to close. Thank you, that Alders. I'd like to close the public portion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The item has been closed. Colleagues, Alderman Gay?
I move item 1.
Second.
Second. Discussion?
May I? Okay.
Okay.
Yes. I think it's gonna be a good project. I think it's gonna be good. I most definitely I'm in support of it. I do like the fact that some historians of New Haven has came out saying, listen, we want to be a part of it. And I think that they should do that. I think they should really meet and try to go through the process, of, naming of builders and stuff like that. I have to rely on the expertise of, our director, Michael Piscatelli, and, his wisdom around the skyline and how that's gonna be blasted out or not. But, I really think it's gonna be a good project. I do wanna keep an eye on them using New Haven Works. I wanna keep an eye on them doing, local hiring and stuff like that. I do because, this is just one of many, that's gonna be coming through New Haven. So we should set a precedent, as I know it's in the LDA around New Haven Works, but we should set a precedent on really trying to get our New Haven residents on these jobs and these job sites, because some of these jobs, some of these places may be not affordable. So I do want us to get an opportunity to be a part of the process as well. So I'm in support.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Hollis? Alderman Dente?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looks like everybody left, but I wanted to thank Mr. Greenberg and Mr. Spiritos for their testimony. Thank you. Also the developer for their willingness to adjust and adapt when it came to the design and the naming to more align with the with the history of the area, but also to Director Piscatelli and team for their willingness to unlock unused lots to create new housing and what you said, in your words, creating housing without displacement. I think we have a lot of areas in our city that we can do this, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you, and I'm fully in support of this project.
Thank you. I too want to speak in favor of this project. I know that I was here when they did the very first presentation. And again, there were a lot of folks from different areas of the city that came down and were very engaged in conversation. They were able to answer the concerns then as they are answering them now. And I also am very excited to see that the developer would connect with the two gentlemen that were here this evening to talk about the history and bring it forth. I'm also very excited because this is another project that I believe is in Ward 6 and continuing to grow and bring Hill to downtown and downtown to the Hill, like I always tell Mr. Seguera, and this is great in utilizing those buildings for affordability, which is what we need in our city. So thank you all, and I am too in support of this project. So thank you. Okay, comments so at this time.
Before you vote on that, Madam Chair, just need to make sure for the record that you include that you all are going to adopt the recommendations from the Lister Committee related to the taxes on the project.
Through the chair, could you repeat that and explain a little more?
Yes, anytime there's a tax abatement agreement, it goes to the Lister Committee. The Lister Committee reviews the tax abatement, makes a recommendation to you all as the committee. You all need to adopt that recommendation if you intend to have that be a part of the development agreement.
Yeah.
Yes, Alderman Gay?
Thank you. No, we want to be consistent on what we've been doing in the past in reference to the Lister. That's what we should be doing. And that's what we're gonna do.
We just need a motion to that effect.
Okay, so
that we can have that on the motion.
Motion to adopt the Lister recommendations for the tax abatement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time. Okay, we're gonna vote on the item. All in favor?
Aye. I move that we, move item 2.
Second.
Yeah, that's been moved and second. Discussion?
It's a no-brainer to me. Thank you, Madam Chair. The 250,000, I think we can use. I think they will use it, properly to do what needs to be done and to support the projects before us.
Alder Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Alder Wingate. I think this, applying for this would be a great thing for our city so that, we can get the word out and let our, residents know, hey, you may be eligible for this. This is how you go about doing it, and allowing us to, give them any information or resources available to see what we can do about this issue for our residents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Gracias.